How about you? Like, I know you're a men's coach, but
Yep.
what was that path like? Oh, and also, just so you know, I'll start recording as of now. Is that
Sure.
okay with you?
Yeah,
All
sounds
right.
good. I kind of
So
figured because it was recording, this was just live. So
yeah, yeah, don't even worry about it. So hey guys, this is Colin's process. Not Colin's process. Wow, you got me in the whole podcasting, in my whole lineage of podcasting. This is the Open Brother Project. I'm Colin Cummings, your host, and we're here with Matt. I did not want to mess up your last name. How do you say that?
Chenard.
Chenard. There you go.
Yep, got it.
I was gonna say Chenard, so I'm glad I asked
That's
you first.
common. Yep.
And you're a men's coach,
Yep.
and
And
when
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when it comes to men's coaching, is there any kind of specific that you go with, or is it just all round transformation in men?
I would say it's all around transformation. It's evolved over the years. So
Hmm.
I grew up playing hockey, competitive hockey. We're from Canada, so obviously that's a must. And then went to school, started get my training to become a personal trainer. Opened up a gym in 2013. Been running that for this is our 10th year coming up. So we own a brick and mortar gym. Went through the pandemic, all that different stuff, and I started to see a need for a deeper kind of coaching. So we do transformational coaching in our gym for everyone, but I am really focusing on men right now and more of that purpose identity shift, that purpose aspect, that identity shift, helping them find a deeper meaning than just achievement and whatever else they're pursuing and finding empty success in.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I absolutely love that. The fact that you're doing not just that you're doing the coaching within within the gym. I've always kind of, because I was a personal trainer at one point myself,
Mhm.
and I've just recently had a couple clients I was training, and I kept seeing that like it's all good to like get them in shape and everything, but if like their mental state isn't there and they're not focusing on the habits and everything that goes revolves around you just having a six pack, like it's
Yeah.
just it's not enough.
Well, and that's where you start to see common principles, right? If it's whether it's thinking a six pack's going to get me this fulfillment of success or this perfect relationship or this perfect job, this promotion, it's the same principles in a different matter. So when men come in, I talk with them, I see what they're struggling with. And then I have a flywheel I kind of audit. I say, is it financial, mental, spiritual, physical, professional, or relational? And then we kind of hone in on the bottom three aspects of that flywheel and really get them to take action and shift their identity, become the consistent man and leader in all areas of life.
Wow, that is amazing. I love that. I love that. I've always been a big believer in mind, body, spirit all
Yep.
coming together, and that's when things really shift for a person. So to hear that you're doing that, I know you're saying my podcast is much needed, but that right there, that's very needed. That's very, very needed,
For
man.
sure. For sure. And it all stemmed from me seeing people are chasing these finite things, right? Whether it's success, whether it's a body image, whether it's money. And once they reach it, they're still left empty. They're still
Yep.
lacking something deeper, the purpose behind it. And my wife, early on in her marriage, she had an exercise addiction, eating disorder, and it's a tricky thing because it's an addiction just like anything else, but it's a good addiction. But that all stemmed from that lack of purpose, lack of identity outside of this thing as well.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So I'm guessing you were kind of her rock through that whole thing she was going through. You're kind of
Try my best. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's all you can do, right? I mean,
Yep.
wow, wow. Jeez. And especially, I'm assuming, did you own the gym at the time?
So we got married in 2012. We opened the gym in 2013. So she would have been struggling with that while we had the gym as well.
Wow, and that must have been so hard for you to really spot because it's like you have a gym, you're so engulfed in personal fitness. So you're like, she's just getting after it, you know?
Well, the funny thing is I was the first one to see it because we got engaged and I lived away playing hockey, and I could see this transition in who she was and the way she looked, um, from every time we visited, but everyone close to her could not see it. So that's when it started. And then it was probably at its peak just after we got married. So I would definitely have noticed, but it was difficult, and it's still difficult at times. We're 8 years later, she's fully recovered. And it's still difficult for me at times to see her around this thing that captured her, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
right? That's a difficult
Yeah.
thing. I need to work through some stuff for sure through that as well.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm glad she's fully recovered. I know all about, in terms of like coaching, I focus mainly on habit formation, and I try to focus on men more so. And yeah, I've seen habits. I've been through it. I've seen habits break people down and build people up, and
Yep.
it's very, very difficult. I am recently, yeah, pretty recently. I'm recently clean myself. Mine was more of a drug thing,
Mhm.
but I had to pull myself past that. My wife was with me throughout that, and I know how hard that can be. So good on you. Good on you for sticking through it.
Yeah, it was tough, but I learned a lot about what love is, what it's supposed to be, right? It's not this transactional thing. It's not, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you type, right?
Mm. Yeah, kind of like it's very much like I was just in a coaching session and we were talking about how you have to you have to show up, you have to love yourself on the days that you're not living up to exactly what you want, where you're not like your complete fullest self. Those are the most important days to love yourself through.
Yep.
And it's kind of the same thing with the marriage, right? Like it's not just about when everything's great, it's about those hard times that really solidify that bond that you guys have.
Yeah, it reminds me of a song. It's called Love is the Tuesdays. Like it's not the Saturdays, it's not the Mondays. It's just like those days that seem to just fit in your calendar flow by, where you have to be intentional in how you love.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. That's great, man. I love everything you're doing. If I lived in Alberta, I would 100%. Oh, good. I would be hitting your gym for sure, for sure. I love the idea that I just saw a clip of it on Instagram, in fact, and I was like, that's the kind of place I want to be in.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, we have a great team. So I'm not there coaching as much. I do most of the coaching online,
Hmm.
or the men's focus, like I said. But sometimes I just go sit in there and distract the members while the coaches are trying to train them, because I just love being there. Right. And I think through the pandemic, I realized, and I think a lot of other people realized, the importance of that connection piece and the community in terms of mental, physical, spiritual fitness and wellness.
It's so important. It's so important. The connection between people. That's one of the reasons why when it's somebody like you, I have no problem doing this via Zoom. But if I know somebody's 30, 40 minutes away, it's like, just let me come and actually meet and actually we
Yep.
like interact together, because just it's so important. I so try and get away from what people constantly gravitate towards, which is like Zoom. It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. And it's like it's really not. It's really
No,
not. It's
no,
good.
no,
It's a good substitute, but it's not the same thing, you know?
no. There's distraction. It's like a one dimensional, right? You can't really feel that in person energy, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Open Brother Project, I have a list of questions that I ask. And I tell every single guy who comes on here who wants to know if they're prepared or not. I say, if you're a man and you've lived a life, then you're already prepared.
Sounds good.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Deal.
No crazy questions. But right before I get to those questions, I noticed something in your Instagram story, and I would love to know, for you, what is your deeper why towards the work that you're doing right now? Because I saw you talking about the whys and not depending solely on motivation. What's your deeper why for what you do?
There's a need. I think there's a need in the sense, that's a surface level question, but there's a need in the sense of men are lost, right? It's become very surface level, very achievement focused. And just from having been posting content consistently for over 2 years now, men don't reach out, men don't comment, but then I'll have men reach out to me and say, hey, I've been following your stuff for 2 years and it's really helped me. And just because you wouldn't know that, I wouldn't know that. Right. So it's about trying to draw that out and say, hey, you're still strong if you acknowledge you're weak. It's only that you can get stronger if you acknowledge you're weak. And if you acknowledge that you are weak, once you acknowledge you're weak, then you can get better.
Mm.
Right? It's only once you have that vulnerability, say, I am lacking in these areas and I need to find a group, a podcast, a mentorship, a coaching program, whatever it might be, to grow in these areas of my life or grow as a person. So that's my deeper why is, and for me, I'd be a believer in my deeper aspect would be the spiritual sense, right? Like there's a spiritual part of it that's so much more important than anything surface level.
Mm. True. True. That's great. That's great. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, so, I mean, speaking of men, speaking of, you know, manhood and things like that, what's a time where you felt the most not like a man?
Oh, that's a good question. Holy, I'm sure there's been a few times. I guess I can't think of an instance as I start talking. Maybe I'll think of an instant, but it's when I feel like my character's been questioned or
Mm.
who I am in a deeper level, right? For me, and that's something I need to work through myself. For me, it's not really a struggle when someone doesn't agree with an idea I have. It's when someone doesn't see who I am beneath it all, right? And I don't necessarily think that's just for men. I think that's people in general, or men and ladies. But for me, I want to be the man of integrity. I want to be the man of integrity, of character. I want to live by core values. And when I feel like I'm doing that and pursuing that every single day, and I feel like I'm being misunderstood or misjudged, that's really difficult because once your character or your integrity is in question, then they question whatever you say after that, right? Which is a really difficult thing to think about and go through. And but then having strong character and integrity also means that you are not dependent on other people's viewpoints for your identity. So it's kind of this confusing hamster wheel in a sense. So I didn't give a specific instance, but that would be, I can think of what that would feel like. And it would be like, yeah, I feel, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean as you're saying that. Definitely try like trying to uphold a certain character and then having somebody almost like not see it, when you're working so hard at it, which is what a lot of guys go through. You're
Mhm.
trying so hard, you're doing so much, in your eyes and with what you do, and somebody just not seeing that or even not valuing that can be pretty tough.
And then as you say that, it kind of sounds a roundabout way as if I'm pursuing gratification in other people's eyes instead of just trying to grow in character. Because if I having strong character also means that you're not dependent on other people. Not that it's not going to affect me, but I shouldn't have strong character and integrity so that other people respect me. And that's a difficult thing to overcome for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I like that answer though. I mean, like, it doesn't always have to be a certain instance. I mean, yeah, that's because sometimes when it's a certain instance, it's hard for everybody to relate, but that right there, that like more introspective look, that's enough, I think.
Perfect. Well, that's mostly what my answers will be, is the introspective stuff.
Perfect. So I mean, not to just leave it there, let's flip the question. When's the
Sure.
time you felt like the most like a man? Like you just felt like I'm just a man right now. I am the
In
man.
in the mountains, in the woods, camping, cutting wood, lighting fire, having coffee, going for a cold plunge in the water, being next to beauty and nature and creation, and smelling the pine, smelling the firewood, not necessarily having to shower, and all these different things. Is not like, yeah, I just feel like there's a part of us that needs that. And I think we're getting distance from that more and more by being so busy, by being so caught up and consumed in materialism, instead of exploring the creation, the beauty that is out there and being a part of it. Because I know there are studies that say testosterone has been affected by a person's time in nature, right? And whether it's just a correlate or an actual like side effect directly, I don't think as much matters as the feeling when you're out there. Just, yeah, I feel like a man, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that completely. I mean, I don't have much like I have nature, but not like so much that it's like not completely surrounded. Like you can go a couple miles in any direction and you'll like hit a road or something like that. But at the same time, when I'm in it, when I'm walking a trail, I feel I can't see any kind of, civilization around me. I don't know, the feeling there. I don't know what it is. I always refer to it like as a reset. It's like a
Hmm.
big reset when
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time in there and take your shoes off, take those socks off, and just kind of walk around and not worry about what's under your feet. And like I don't know, I
Yeah.
love it. I love doing that. The grounding, I believe they call that when your shoes are off, socks are
Yeah.
off, and everything like that.
I actually just headed outside to my backyard and grounded for a little bit, play with my dog for a second. So there we go.
There you go. There you go. I have a little patch of field. It's like a parkette that I walk to usually most mornings, and I'll just take my shoes and socks off, and people will look at me like I'm very odd. And I'll just walk around a little bit and just take it
Yeah.
in.
It's funny how those things have become odd, right? When in reality,
Yeah.
it's closest to probably how we've been designed to live.
Yeah. I get a lot of looks as I'm doing it, taking off my shoes and everything. It's funny, but it's necessary. It feels
Yep.
so good as I'm doing it. I always I just take a second to just like, ground both feet and then also like, just put my head towards the sun. And it just feels like those two things together. If you just put some water in the mix, all of a sudden it's like I'm gonna become a caveman all over again. I'm just
Yep.
gonna
We just need the water now. That's the trifecta there.
Yeah, exactly. So going from, as we're talking about manhood, I mean, you can't talk about manhood without fatherhood. What was your relationship like with your father?
Good relationship. Um,
Yeah.
Very supportive, and pushed us to pursue excellence in everything we did and work hard, but would never force us to do anything that we didn't want to do, in the sense of sports, right? So we played sports our whole life and grew up playing sports competitively, but I never felt that. I know my brother said the same thing, is we never felt that we had to. We never felt like we had to reach a certain thing. And I think that's a common thing nowadays. I'm seeing a lot in the hockey culture specifically. I can't really speak to the other cultures, but this fathers trying to live, parents trying to live through their kids and push them beyond what a kid should be doing. Like a kid should be doing other stuff than just playing one sport. And so, yeah, hard worker. My dad was a hard worker, is a hard worker, and solid core values, solid character.
Really? That's amazing. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
That is actually really great to hear. Yeah. Yeah. I was just in a conversation with somebody. just yesterday, and it was quite the opposite. And a lot of
Mhm.
conversations I have, it's quite the opposite. So this is actually the first time I'm hearing, a very stable, integral sounding man that you're talking about in your father. Is there anything looking back that relationship would be lacking?
Mm. I guess it would be, we could have gone deeper,
Mm,
right? And when I was younger, I would retract from deeper conversations just because I wasn't necessarily comfortable, which is funny because I love them now.
true.
I don't know what the shift is or the shift was. Um, but honestly, I can't really think of anything that would have been from him, my dad, but in the sense it would be from me not having invested everything I possibly could have in that deeper sense of it.
Mm,
Um, and I mean, in the sense of too, like I'm a teenager, I'm a kid, I'm probably not super focused on that either. But looking back, like you said, that would be one thing.
mm. Is there anything from your father that you look at or have looked at? I don't know if you have any children as of yet.
No, I do not.
Um, but is there anything that you would take, that you look at his relationship with, or look at his fathering style, and you say that is something I have to bring into the next generation of my family?
Patience, hard work. And so my dad he is now 63 in September, and he's worked the same job since he was 18. He's with the same
Wow.
company. Yeah. Or 20. I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's 18 or 20, but just the steadfast and the hours he worked for us so that we could do the things we wanted, and the amount of sacrifice. So like I said, we played hockey, and my dad would drive 9 hours to watch us play hockey, drive all night, and go to work the next day just to be there to watch us
Wow.
when we played away. So that's something I really admire in people, because like I use the 5 love languages when I coach people to help them understand how they feel loved. And lower on my list is acts of service. And I struggle to see how people do that so easily. So that's something I would like to take, is the patience, the hard work, and the service of like doing anything for his family to make sure they're okay.
Wow. That's that's very, very special. That type of
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, for you, I'm sure it's very special. For me, my relationship with my father, it was like pretty non-existent. He was not around. Um, so to hear that type of fathering, to be able to do stuff like that, or have stuff like that done for you, is just incredible. That's really incredible. And then the same
Yeah.
job since he was 20 or 18 even. It's
Yeah. And I think I
wow.
take that for granted sometimes too, right? It's just what I grew up with and what I'm used to.
Mhm.
And coaching other men, I now see that's not the case for majority of people.
No, no, definitely not. I've that this is the first time I'm hearing that.
Okay, I'll have to share that with them. I'm sure he'd be very
that's
proud.
that's that's absolutely incredible. Good for him, man.
Mhm.
Really good for him. That's wow. I'm blown away by that. It reminds me of there's a gentleman, his name's Cameron Haynes. He's a
Yep.
ultra runner. You've heard of him. He like I remember he was just talking about, I'm sure he might be quitting his job now because he's a New York Times bestseller, or he should be at least. But yeah, just hearing that he would like do these marathons and do all this hunting and do all this stuff, and then also have the same job for like 20 years, like, and he's like never missed a day. He just
Mhm.
always comes in no matter what. And when I hear that type of, I guess what you're saying, like patience or routine, it's like, to me it's like awe-inspiring, because I'm like
Yep.
entrepreneur, creative type. I'll go from this thing to that thing. I've worked tons of different jobs, and It's always something to admire.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think like going back to the why, and he would just have a really strong why, not just, but
Mm.
just his focus was on his family,
Yeah.
um, giving up a lot of things he could have done just to make sure that we were provided for. And there was no sense ever. I never got any sense that there was any kind of resentment
Mm.
ever, um, which is pretty cool.
Man, your dad's built different. You
Yes,
gotta, you
yes,
gotta
he
get,
is.
you gotta get him a shirt that says that.
I like that.
He'll be like, "What does this even mean?"
It's okay, Dad. You don't have to know.
Yeah. um. So, just moving away from that, and thank you for sharing that. Also,
Mhm.
what is your outlook on vulnerability?
I think it's really important. I think I think it matters where and when too, right? If I'm thinking of myself as a boss or myself as an entrepreneur and I am a coach, that's not the time for me to be vulnerable in the sense if I'm struggling with something, right? My job in that is to coach. If I'm not bringing my stuff into a coaching call because that's where I am working to give them value. But I've come to see that there's a lot to be gleaned in vulnerability too, and sharing our stories. And that's essentially what you're doing here, is having people share with vulnerability to show that we're all going through similar things, right? It might not be that I had a hard time with my dad, but maybe something else I say during this conversation will resonate with someone. And I think it's actually our duty to share things we've gone through, right? So my wife, as an example, she's gone through that journey, but now she's becoming a eating disorder coach, and she wants to write a book to utilize her pain to help others, which isn't easy, right? It's difficult to share because you
Mhm.
then put yourself out there for judgment. But if you cannot, I don't think you can be fully receive if you're not fully vulnerable. You can't fully experience joy and fulfillment without being fully vulnerable in the right situations.
Mm, I like that a lot, and kudos to her for doing that. That's
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
Because I mean, it's not just the part of putting yourself out there. It's also reliving, right? You got to do a lot of reliving.
Yeah.
You got to do it on a deep level when you're writing something about like
Mhm.
that. Wow. Yeah. You know what? And when you talk about like sharing and being vulnerable, that is like a big part of this podcast. The reason for it, because I'm hoping that, there's some younger guy that sees it and understands like, everybody has these things that they go through. And maybe right now he has a very tough time with vulnerability, but he's now hearing this hockey player, this strapping businessman talk about how he thinks vulnerability is this great thing. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden it shifts his outlook on it. Like that is the hope. So
I
yeah.
think leaders that can be vulnerable and actually genuine leaders that are trying to better other people, it might be difficult in the short run, but in the long run, it pays off. And you see so many leaders that are just about the persona or the mask, are trying to get to the next level of leadership or whatever it else might be, that these habits, these poor habits start to manifest in their life too. And that's actually what my coaching program is built around. It's called the true alpha. So when people hear alpha, they probably think about some overbearing, aggressive person most of the time, but they don't
Yeah.
understand that an alpha wolf is not like that at all, right? Right? It takes care of its pack. It is serving, and it is a true embodiment of leadership. It's not this facade. It's not this puffed out chest of what we think masculinity is or what men should be. Yes, men should
Hmm.
be protectors. Men should take care. Men should go to work and make sure they're providing for their family. But that doesn't mean you can't be vulnerable. That doesn't mean you can't struggle. That doesn't mean that you have to pretend or break others down so you can be more. It just doesn't work like that. That's not a true man. That's not true alpha.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I like that. I like that. I like the sound of that program because it is good to make the distinction. Like when we have all these phrases like toxic masculinity
Mhm.
and all sorts of different things like that, when all of a sudden now when we think of alphas, we think of guys with like a backwards hat and glasses on at the beach, and he's cracking beers on his head and downing them and doing all that stuff, and that's really not what it is. And I love that you brought up the example of wolves, because like you'd have to watch a pack of wolves for quite some time to even figure out who the alpha was. They don't, it's not a peacocking thing like we think in terms
Yeah,
of
that's the word.
humans. It's not that. It's a completely different thing. There's a lot of integrity in being an alpha,
Mhm.
especially when we think of it in terms of wolves, like
Yep.
willing to put your life on the line
Yep.
for a group of people, or
Yep.
group of, your pride, so to speak.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So what's a time where you felt the most vulnerable, and how did you deal with that?
It This one I have more of an instance, but I might think of something as I go along. But it's during the pandemic. So owning a gym during the pandemic was not easy by any means. And I felt like I had to shoulder everything. Right. And then to finally realize that I could share with my team that I'm struggling like this. I don't know. I don't know if we're going to make it through this. I don't know if we need to sell a gym. I don't want to deal with another email or an angry person or someone accusing my character anymore. Right. And that's a vulnerable time for me. And just to think that it got easier once I could be vulnerable, once I could share with my wife, once I could share with my manager's group. And um yeah, I think that would probably be the most vulnerable I felt or I was. And now I'm trying to continue that forward by sharing, I'm going to share more and more my experience through that to help other business owners or other leaders know that sucked. That was hard. That was awful. But I think people need to hear that, even if it doesn't make it go away, it doesn't make it better, just to know that you're not alone in that. And it's okay to tell someone else too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that would be a rough time. I mean, I know I was one of those angry people with my gym. I was like, oh, why can't I come in, and what's all this scheduling nonsense? And I just want to deadlift.
I
I just
know.
want to deadlift.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. That was my
Yeah.
thing too.
I'm glad you guys did come out of it though, because it seems like you're doing good, and it seems like you're bouncing back, and that's
Yeah.
good to see.
We totally
That's
transitioned. We had to open and close 5 times, and we are closed completely for 7 months. We couldn't use our gym. But in that process, we totally shifted our model and added the coaching aspect. We added that deeper layer of helping people not just lose weight and not just gain fitness results, be able to keep it because it's a mindset and a mental shift that they have now.
mm,
It's a transformation that they've had internally that then showcases externally, and they have the tools and habits to do that. So that I am grateful for, but I would not be against us not going through that again to do that again.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? It's great to know that like through that darkest time, like, something amazing came out of it, because now the work you're doing and that mental shift there, that identity shift that has to take place, it's like it sounds like became the forefront of what you guys were teaching all of a sudden.
Yep.
So that's actually great. That's really good.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot to be learned and a lot of refinement, let's say refinement through that whole process.
Mm, mm. Um, huh. So I guess when it comes to emotions, how do you go about dealing with your emotions? Are you a shut off person? Do you open up about them? Are you
Depends
extreme? Yeah.
on the person. It depends on the situation. So with my wife, I want to talk about it and I want to figure it out. I don't like when things are lingering. I don't like feeling like I'm not understood or things aren't understood. And Jaleesa, my wife, would be total opposite. She needs time, she needs space and that distance, which makes it hard for me. And then in the sense, so with closer people to me, I'm fine with having those deeper conversations or those more upfront conversations. For people I'm not as close with, I would tend to be a little bit more passive aggressive,
Mm,
avoiding confrontation, making little remarks, not like aggressive or anything, but could be enough that they understand that I'm not happy with something they've done or not done,
yeah.
instead of just talking with them. And when I get stressed, I become a perfectionist. I see everything wrong. I see everything out of place. I see what's not going right. So, how I've dealt with that now in that sense is intentionally creating distance from that, like actually naming it and say, I'm feeling this right now. And if I'm going to go into the gym as an example, I need to know that I'm going to see some things out of place, but it's going to be okay. And I'm going to, if it's a bigger deal, then I'll make sure that I ask to talk to the person instead of just making a quick comment and sideswipe them or T-bone them in that way.
Mm, mm. A lot of self-awareness there. That's really good. That's really good. Most people who have passive aggressive tendencies rarely see it.
Mm.
Very rarely see it. I've met more than a few in my life, and they rarely actually are able to name it that that's what they're doing, you know?
Yeah. And I think I know it because it's an avoidance tactic of confrontation. I don't like to upset people, but then, so it's almost like I'm saying it so I can say that I've said it, but
Hmm.
maybe they won't actually pick up on it. So
Hmm.
then it doesn't actually cause anything, because I'm not comfortable with people who are not really close to me with conflict. I just want to get out of the way. Or if they're close to me, I want to get out of the way. If not, it's more of this lingering thing.
Yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear that. Huh. That's it's good that you take measures to actually deal with it though.
Mhm.
That's a really good thing that a lot of people don't do. And I mean, obviously it's because you're a coach, but I mean it's probably because of the amount of self-awareness you have as well. So good on you for doing that. Very good
Thank you.
on you. I have to introduce you to some of my friends. Maybe you can help them with that.
I saw a
There's
really good
me.
post the other day. It was something about create a stoplight between your emotions and your actions. And that was really
Mm,
beneficial to me, right? It's like actually in your mind sitting at the stoplight and saying, what am I feeling? What am I going to do next with this? Because it's usually not the emotion that causes anything, it's the reaction and the action based on your emotion that does.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Uh, so and it's okay if it's the if it's the same gym instance, but I was gonna ask, when was the time you felt very scared, and how did you go about dealing with that fear?
Like two would be when my wife was sick, right?
Mm,
Seeing someone almost like okay with their losing their life or something like that, right? And it's like any addiction, anything that consumes someone. It's a scary thing to see someone seeing someone in one way and then seeing them in a totally different way.
mm,
That's a scary thing to be exposed to. And then, yeah, it would be the pandemic, waking up, sweating, thinking, I don't know what to do tomorrow. I don't know how to overcome this. I don't know what decision to make. There's a lot of different things with passports and all these different, like there's big decisions that
yeah.
regardless of the decision you make, You're going to upset people. You're going to, whatever emotion someone had around the whole pandemic, it gets focused on the person that has to make the decision.
Mm.
All the emotion, all their fear. And if someone isn't aware that they're having fear, it gets misplaced and it gets projected at other people. And
True.
to, again, see shifts in people from that fear that you have, fairly well, you have deep relationships totally change too. That's a scary thing. And then just to not know if we will keep our doors open for another month or the month after that. And knowing that we had to go into some pretty big debt to ensure
Yeah.
to be open.
Wow. And I guess a quick side question. What what inspired you, or what took place that you felt like, because you could have just sold the place, like you could have just, folded up and just stopped. What made you keep going?
I think it was the coaches and the members thinking about, we're the only CrossFit gym in town here. And I'm sure another one could have come in and done fine. But I had numerous meetings where members were breaking down in my office because we had to close. Right. And just like, this is more than fitness. This is a community for people. We go back to saying or talking about we need community, but I don't think people understand how much we need community. And that was taken away multiple times. And then that was my why, that was my purpose, is to try to create a place for the coaches to be able to make it through financially, and for the members to have somewhere to go back to, even if it was 50% of what it was before.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I was courageous every single day like that. And I'm going to do this. No, there's days like telling Julius, I don't know if, and she would say it too, like, what are we doing? Like, we can't keep doing this type of thing. When is it going to get better? But that would be the deeper reason.
Mm. Very commendable.
Thank you.
Definitely very commendable, because yeah, I mean, I know people who need the gym like that, because it's not just about fitness, it's about clearing your head, and it's about, exercising out those demons literally for some people. And I watched not only gyms, but a lot of meetings, like NA meetings and AA meetings and stuff like that, also have to close up. And again, like we talked about, Zoom is just not the same thing. And
No,
a lot of people were pushed to, their dark places because of that. So for you to be one of those people to stand and try and get through it the best you can, going through all the guidelines and everything they set up for you, it's a big thing. So good on you, definitely.
thank you. Yeah. And I just kept reminding myself, how you treat this situation is going to stick with you forever. Right. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people didn't think about that, whether they were aggressive, angry, whatever it might have been. Like, we're all angry in our own sense, but you have to be careful what you do, because that'll stick. And how you handled the business, how you handled yourself during the pandemic will probably stick for quite a while.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I completely agree with that. There's some places that acted certain ways or did certain things that I'm like, well, I don't know if I ever want to do business with this place again,
Right.
because of the way they decided to be. And you can't completely put it on them. Like, the government, came through and had certain things that had to happen, but like some people handled it like you did. You sound like you handled it very gracefully and thoughtfully, and others didn't. So
Yeah.
definitely stands out. Um, as a man, what's something that you wish you did earlier?
step outside of my comfort zone.
Hmm.
Growing up, I was very timid. So you can't tell because we're not in person, but I'm 6'6", 220.
Are you?
Yeah. And,
Wow.
but growing up, I didn't feel like that, right? I felt like, so I'd work out a lot to put on the weight. So I was 6'4", 160 pounds for a while. So every single year, I would just eat a bunch of steaks, a bunch of protein powder, just eat like crazy, work out for 2 hours a day. And every summer I'd put on 20 pounds of muscle, 20 pounds of muscle, thinking that that would give me confidence. That would
Hmm.
give me this authority, like not the true alpha. And that's kind of where it's derived from too, is it's not going to come from that. And going back to stepping out and doing things I'm not comfortable with, I would get physically ill if I had to talk in front of people, or if there's a chance I could be judged by putting myself out there. So if you told me 4 years ago that I'd be on podcasts, I'd be sharing my thoughts on Instagram, whatever else it might be, that would freak me out. And I still struggle, not in this sense, but if I have to present in front of people, I still struggle. And I think, come to think, if I would have done that earlier, it wouldn't have been as much of a struggle. But I truly believe we need to get uncomfortable every single day in some way, shape, or form. And discomfort is vulnerability too. I do cold exposure every single day, and that's uncomfortable, but that's a lot easier than public speaking for me. So if I could go back, it would be lean into those a bit more. Um, so it wouldn't be such a long process of growth.
Mm, that's true. True. Yeah, I kind of have the same thing when it came to speaking in front of people. That was always a crazy notion. Like I'd rather jump off a cliff and
Yeah,
just see what happens.
honestly, yeah,
So I definitely understand that. Yeah, we all you have to get over it. I mean, what I did for a year, I did stand-up comedy.
really.
So yeah, I was just getting on stage sometimes 3 times a night, and I would just get on stage, and it was nerve-wracking every single time. It never got comfortable. It was just like a cold plunge, just every single time. It was just like,
Right.
well, here it goes. You got to do it.
But did it get easier? Like so you said it didn't get easier, but it make public speaking easier for you now.
Yeah, if I have to speak in front of a crowd, because with stand-up, it's like you got to make them laugh. So now all of a sudden, if I'm like right now, I'm writing a book on habit formation. I'm gonna write a series of books on habit
Awesome.
formation. And if I start talking in front of a crowd about that, I'm gonna feel way more confident because it's like they're not even expecting to laugh. They're expecting
Right.
information, they're expecting somebody to just, speak well. And if I make them laugh on top of it, it's like, oh, this guy is great. So it's like
Bonus.
now it's like no problem. It's the idea of speaking in front of people. But yeah, it got easier in the sense of every time I would say yes to somebody, it was like the first time. It'd be like, oh no, what did I just do? Why did I just say I'm gonna be on that show? And oh my God. And then I would get there and be like, okay, it's not too bad. And then as soon as I touch the microphone, I'd be like, I'm fine.
Mm.
And that's what started happening more and more. As I touched the mic, all of a sudden I'm okay.
So it's ritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like cold plunges, right? It's always uncomfortable, but like
Yep.
you're just like, okay, here we go. And
I
then
know
you
I can do
notice,
this.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's like I just did like 2 minutes yesterday, or 10 minutes or however long. And yeah, it's a like you said, ritual.
Mhm.
So I get that. And you're 6'6". Wow.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Yeah. Should have played basketball, but no, I played hockey.
Man, could have played either, really. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Um, but just talking about, I guess, comfort zones and growing up, but what's the biggest misconception you had growing up about being a man?
Man, these are good questions. Misconception. I don't want to leave too much dead air here.
It's okay.
Um,
It's okay.
well, I don't know if I would have a lot because like I'll go back to my dad.
Mhm.
Right? I feel like he was a really good example. And that's what I was exposed to predominantly. Um, I mean, I would be in the hockey culture, which can be a pretty toxic culture too.
Mhm.
So I would see the contrast of that being in the hockey culture and then having my dad as a, like, if you looked at side by side, I would definitely not want to gravitate to the hockey culture. I would want to gravitate more to being like my dad. So I don't think I got any misconceptions of what a man should be. I definitely probably got clarity on what a man shouldn't be.
Mm. Mm. Even more valuable sometimes.
Yeah. The
That's
contrast.
yeah, yeah. I got that. It's kind of like the opposite story. I got that from reconnecting with my dad and from
Mm,
seeing him through, like, well, not seeing him throughout my life. I kind of got the idea of what a man shouldn't do.
mm,
Like you shouldn't leave your kids. You shouldn't just disappear. And then when I did reconnect with him, he was deep in, he had his own traumas and stuff. So he was a heavy user of alcohol and things of that nature. So I kind of saw everything that like you
mhm.
shouldn't be doing as a man, and it was kind of the greatest gift seeing him in that light, because I knew I was 50% him, 50% my mom, and I was like, I can become like that if I'm not
Mhm,
careful,
mhm.
if I don't take the right steps, you know.
Right.
So it was almost a gift, because if he had showed up all cleaned up and everything, I wouldn't have known that part of him, and I wouldn't have saw all that to
Right.
kind of look and kind of use that as like a bit of a fuel to kind of push myself towards, bettering myself.
Right.
So yeah, it's funny. It's funny how important fathers are.
Yeah.
It's so important. So important. Wow. For you, what do you feel like the most difficult part of being a man is?
I guess, well, currently I haven't been super exposed to it, but I guess that toxic masculinity thought
Mm,
process, like this label, um, that you don't really have any control over. And I kind of use an example in my mind. So have you done CrossFit before?
CrossFit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love CrossFit.
Okay. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people won't even try CrossFit because they've probably heard a story about someone getting hurt or it's super intense or all these different things. So they have this picture of what CrossFit is. Right. And I think that's this almost toxic masculinity thing is if you see, or some people see any resemblance of a man being a man, they instantly go to that, whatever they've seen or whatever they've heard. And I think that would be on the forefront. But remind me exactly the phrasing of the question too, Colin. Make sure I answered it.
Um, the it's the most difficult part about being a man for you.
Yeah. So I think it would be that. And I think it would be learning that's okay to be vulnerable, but also be strong. Like that's such a can be a dichotomy. It almost seems to be at opposites. How do you
Mm,
balance that? How do you know when to be either or? How do you know when you're not just hiding behind trying to be strong? How do you know when you're not that you're being too vulnerable, that you need to be strong in this situation in order to lead? I think that'd be a difficult thing to balance.
mm, true. True, that is true, because in one sense you need one to do the other.
Yeah.
You need strength to be vulnerable, but then also it's like at times you need to be strong. Like Jordan Peterson said something about, like,
The
being the
monster.
strongest person, or the monster. There's that. And also he was talking about like funerals. He's like, you want to be the person who people can look to at your father's funeral. Like
Mm,
you want to be somebody who's like, have it all together kind of thing. so
Yeah.
they can kind of look to you as that pillar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that. My dad passed away in 2016, and I remember hearing that, and I was that. I made sure to be that at the funeral, and yeah, it's a balancing act,
Mhm.
because at times I wish I wasn't. I wish I was able to be more vulnerable and just like cry and express everything, but I stayed rather stoic, just just to hopefully help my other siblings stay strong through it too, you know?
I'm sure they
So
found a lot of value in that and support in that for sure.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I hope so. Yeah, things like that. It's tough. Tough being a guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Man. So what's something that you had to do away with in order to become a better man?
The fear of failure, or it's not gone completely, but pushing into that fear of failure. So trying to let go of it and knowing that, not just knowing, but believing and acting as if I believe who I am isn't defined by what I do or don't do, what I fail at, or how I succeed. I think that's a continuing thing for me, is whether I post something, whether I share a thought, whether I make a decision, whether I stand in truth and knowing it's going to impact someone or make maybe make me look a certain way. I think that's what it has to be, is letting go and of that fear of those things, knowing if I'm doing it for the right reason, at least I can stand in that.
Mm, true. True. That is a good thing to do away with as much as you can, you know. It's a reoccurring thing throughout life because there's different stages, but
Yeah.
the more you can do away with that, the better.
Do things that scare you and they become less scary, but then you try scary things and things that you maybe you could fail and it might be a bigger deal if you do.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least then you have the concrete experience that when things scare you and you confront them, that you have the ability to triumph over that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start to develop the evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a big thing. It's a it's no good as a person to stay within the abstract thoughts. You know, a lot of anxiety can be brought up in your abstract, you know.
Yeah.
I tell my clients, you know, stay in the concrete, like what's actually happening,
Yeah.
what's actually going on, you know.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. So what's something, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but what are some things, or it's just, you know, even one thing that you think men should start rekindling in their lives?
Community,
Hmm.
meeting. I'm part of men's groups and I'm part of going for a bike trip at the end of the month here and with a bunch of guys. I think that's it, right? Is meeting outside of these parties, I guess it would be like not just going to get drunk but actually going out in nature, being in the wilderness and experiencing something more than just this instant gratification. Like putting yourself in a setting, putting yourself in a situation where there can be a deeper connection than just talking about sports or just talking about the weather, politics, whatever it might be. There's an open space for good things to happen and a deeper connection to happen. So I would
Mm.
recommend find a community, and that takes courage. So if I challenge, maybe if I challenge man and say that takes a lot of courage. So I
Yeah.
challenge you to do that.
You know what a real badass thing to do is?
Yeah.
Get in the forest barefoot and talk with your friends.
Yeah. Throw some rocks into some water, maybe.
True. Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, right now, it's like I just moved into this community. We've been here about 8 months, nine. Oh no, actually no, it's been a year. It's been a year. I still haven't seen a lot of the guys around, but I want to start a men's group in this community and see where that goes, because it's just it's great. Like I've been in them myself, and so beneficial, so
Yep.
beneficial. And I think a big part of it is what you mentioned, getting outside the parties, outside of that type of atmosphere, you know, and actually taking time for the deeper conversations, for the pains and the fears and then just the openness, it's just different.
Yeah. Go for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Uh so oh, we're almost at the last one here. Hmm. Yeah, I guess we are at the last one. I already asked the rekindling one. If there's some men out in the world who are having trouble on their path to manhood, what's some advice that you would give those men, those young men?
Start moving into direction of the people that you admire, and not admire in the sense of success, not admire in the sense of just how strong they look or all these different things, but the deeper stuff, like the qualities of character. Start to write down what you admire in other men and try to move towards that every single day. And I think Jordan Peterson talked about this too. He talks about we tend to not set ideals for ourselves because when we fall short, we beat ourselves up, right? It eats us up. But without setting ideals for yourself, so let's say you take a quality character that is hard work or a quality character that is integrity. When you set those out there, it doesn't mean you're going to be those tomorrow. It means that you're striving, you're working every single day to be closer to that, to be closer to those things, because after some time, it'll become who you are. I think we react based on what we think people want from us instead of saying, who do we need to be in order to lead and make an impact? So we're talking about young men. Any young men are listening to this. Start to write down qualities of character that you want to embody. And because those qualities of character have been here forever, right? Those are truths that are going to outlast all of us. The success, the money, the six pack, whatever it might be, those go away. They could be gone tomorrow. You can't hold on to them. But when you impact people with who you are, that's what makes the difference. And that might shift their life. And that's why I appreciate you having me on here, Colin, is that we have the opportunity to plant seeds, and that might have a drastic impact on someone's life. And then they have a drastic impact on someone else's life. Whereas if it's just about the achievement, just about the success, and not the person behind the success of the achievement, then we're missing a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. That's great advice. Even as you were saying that, I'm like, I should do that. I should write down some ideals. Because I have those men in mind, and I have those characteristics in mind. I have a sheet of paper. I guess I have written them down. I have a sheet of paper I keep in my wallet,
Mm.
and it's I call it my promise to the universe. And it says, I, Colin Cummings, and I vow to be, and then I have like integrity, courage, all these like big words that I feel like I should embody. And then it says that's my promise to the universe, and I just
Mhm.
kind of keep it in my wallet all the time. It's it helps. It helps because it seems like a lot of the time when we talk about affirmations and we talk about writing things down and moving towards it, it seems like some silly kind of stuff to some people. But it's like I've had that in my wallet for at least 5 or 6 years. And, in the 5, 6 years now, I am embodying all those things. I got clean. I'm with my wife. I'm only with her. I've never stepped outside our relationship. I'm somebody of integrity now, and it feels really good. I don't think about it often because I'm it's hard to just pat yourself on the back all the time,
Right.
but when I kind of step back and think of where I was 7 years ago, I'm like, I'm moving into it way more than I thought I'd be, way more than I thought I could.
Yeah.
And
And you stepped into it with action, and that's where the change happens, right? Like you said, it's not just something on a paper. You have to actually live into those each and every day. And that's where the change
mhm,
happens.
yeah. Oh man, thank you so much for being on the show. I'd like to acknowledge you for being so open, um, being so thoughtful with your words, and for planting those seeds in somebody that I know for sure you have with those words. So thank you so much, and thank you for what you did through the pandemic and pushing through, and thank you for coaching men out in Alberta, because it's needed all over. So I'm glad there's somebody being a fisherman of men outside of Ontario doing things like that. Thank you so much, man.
Well, thanks, Colin. I really appreciate it. This was such a fantastic time for me, and appreciate all the hard work and work you're doing in this space as well. And I'm excited to share this podcast with many people.
Man, thank you so much, guys. This has been another episode of the Open Brother Project. Rate the podcast, review it, or just watch it. That's fine too. But thank you guys for watching. Take it easy.